Growing up, I always believed family meant loyalty, trust, and protection, but I learned early that not everyone sees it that way. My brother Caleb was the center of attention, the golden boy, the one with the perfect smile and the charming lies that everyone wanted to believe. He was loud, bold, always walking into a room like he owned it, and our parents adored him for it. They called him a natural leader, said he was destined for greatness, and when he messed up, they said boys will be boys. When he crashed Dad's car, it was just an accident. When he dropped out of college, it was because the system didn't understand brilliance. But when I got sick and missed class, they said I was lazy. When I stayed up studying, they said I was overthinking. When I worked 2 jobs to save for college, they said I was being dramatic. They couldn't see me, not really, because Caleb's shine was too blinding. But I stayed quiet, I stayed focused, and I did what needed to be done. While he partied, I cleaned up. While he borrowed money and never paid it back, I budgeted every coin. I was the one fixing the broken pipes, helping Mom with bills, building spreadsheets in the dark because we couldn't afford electricity some months. They saw his charm, but I carried the weight. After college, while Caleb disappeared to find himself on someone else's dime, I started building something real. I had no investors, no handouts, just a second-hand laptop and a crazy idea that I could build a digital platform that helped small businesses run smoother. I taught myself to code at night, answered emails in the day, and worked at a local cafe just to keep my rent paid. I lost count of how many times I failed, how many times my site crashed or clients ghosted me after I gave them everything. But I kept going. I slept on the floor in a shared apartment, skipped meals just to afford server space, and when no one believed in me, I learned to believe in myself. I would stare at my reflection and whisper, just one more step, because that's all I could manage some nights. I didn't have connections, but I had grit. I didn't have charm, but I had consistency. And slowly, things started to move. I got my first client, a bakery on the edge of town who couldn't afford a real developer, but I helped them triple their sales. They told someone else. Then someone else. Word spread. I reinvested every dollar, upgraded my gear, built a small team, and opened a tiny office that smelled like dust and coffee. But to me, it was the start of everything. While Caleb posted selfies from bars and blamed the world for his failures, I built a business brick by brick. When the business finally took off, after years of grinding and sacrifice, when the numbers finally turned green and clients started knocking on the door instead of me begging for their attention, that's when Caleb returned. Just like a storm that shows up after the roof's been fixed. He walked into my office with that same smile, the one he used to get out of trouble, and an apology that sounded just real enough to break through my walls. He said he was proud of me, said he was tired of wasting his life, said he wanted to change, to grow, to be part of something meaningful. He looked me in the eyes and said, "You're doing what I always dreamed of, I just didn't know how to get there." And in that moment, I saw my brother. Not the reckless boy who made messes, but someone lost, finally ready to be found. And I believed him, because family doesn't lie, right? Family might mess up, might stumble, might hurt you without meaning to, but they don't destroy you on purpose. At least, that's what I thought. So I brought him in. I made him a partner, gave him shares, introduced him to my team, and told him he was blood, which meant they could trust him like they trusted me. I taught him everything. How to pitch, how to handle clients, how to represent the brand I had poured my soul into. He was magnetic, and people gravitated to him. Investors smiled wider when he walked into meetings. Clients said yes faster when he told the story. So I let him be the face, while I stayed in the background, managing operations, making sure the engine kept running while he took the wheel. Because for me, it was never about the spotlight, it was about the legacy, building something that would last, that would mean something, that could take care of everyone we loved. I thought we were doing it together, brothers side by side, writing a new chapter where he finally lived up to the promise everyone always believed in him. But what I didn't see was that while I was looking ahead, Caleb was already turning the pages behind my back. Everything seemed fine, or so I thought. Projects were moving, meetings were scheduled, Caleb was charming investors and clients like he always did, and I was in the back, making sure every detail was perfect, every deadline met. But then, things started to feel off. A major client suddenly stopped replying to my emails, another canceled a deal without warning, and one morning, when I tried to log into our core platform, my access was denied. I assumed it was a glitch, Maybe a system update I wasn't told about, but when I tried again and again, and still couldn't get in, my stomach sank. I called the tech lead, but he said Caleb told him I had stepped back from operations. I laughed nervously, thinking it had to be a misunderstanding. I tried calling Caleb. No answer. Texted. No response. I drove straight to our office, only to find my name removed from the security clearance list. I wasn't even allowed inside the company I built from the ground up. I rushed to the corporate registry office, still in disbelief, hoping to find proof that this was a mistake I could fix. But when I saw the documents, my legs almost gave out. The company had been restructured, my name was wiped off as co-founder, and Caleb had sold a massive share to an outside investor, all without my consent. My name was gone like I never existed. I went to his apartment, heart pounding, not even knowing what I'd say when I saw him, but the moment he opened the door, everything in me shattered. He stood there like nothing had happened, leaned against the frame with a drink in his hand and said, "What? You didn't read the fine print? Business is business." No apology, no regret, no brother. Just a shrug. I couldn't speak. I couldn't scream. I felt like the walls were closing in and the floor was breaking beneath me, because the betrayal didn't come from a stranger in a suit. It came from the one person I trusted with my life. The one person who knew what this company cost me, who knew every night I cried, every meal I skipped, every sacrifice I made to build something from nothing. And he took it all like it meant nothing. He didn't just steal my company. He stole my story, my struggle, my legacy. And in that moment, I realized I never truly had a brother. I had a thief in disguise. I disappeared from the spotlight, but I didn't disappear from the fight. While Caleb soaked up the fame built on my work and lies, I got to work behind the scenes. Quietly, strategically, relentlessly. I reached out to everyone. Vendors he burned bridges with, clients he ghosted, developers whose contracts he never honored, investors who had been misled. Many were hesitant at first, still dazzled by his charm, but others were furious. Furious at the way he walked into boardrooms like a king, took credit for what he didn't build, and discarded people like they were nothing. They remembered me. They remembered the truth. I began gathering everything I had, old emails, dated blueprints, signed NDAs, proposal decks with my name, source codes I personally wrote, contracts bearing my signature, receipts, screenshots, and timelines that matched. I went back through 5 years of digital evidence. I even tracked down the freelancer who designed our first logo. He still had the brief I sent him, with my initials on the bottom corner. Then I hired a legal team. Not just any lawyers, but the kind who had been overlooked, underestimated, and had their own vendettas against corporate injustice. People who had a point to prove, just like me. And together, we built a case so solid that even Caleb's smile couldn't spin it. When the lawsuit landed on his desk, he didn't see it coming. And when the story hit the media, he couldn't stop it. Headlines flipped like dominoes. The same outlets that once called him the next tech genius were now questioning everything. Visionary or thief? The truth behind Caleb's startup. The real founder steps forward. From partner to pariah, the fall of Caleb Moore. His polished image cracked. Investors began backing out, demanding answers. Clients froze their contracts. Endorsements vanished. He released a statement denying everything, but the evidence kept coming. Leaked emails, voice recordings, screenshots, staff testimonials, and the final nail. An old recording of Caleb drunkenly admitting he built most of it. I just made it look good. The court ruled in my favor. In front of a packed courtroom, I was reinstated as founder, majority shareholder, and legal owner of everything he stole. But I didn't stop there. I restructured the company from the inside out. Rebranded. Cleaned house. And in less than a year, the company I rebuilt had grown 10 times bigger than the one he hijacked. Every investor who once walked away now came knocking, but this time, I chose who came in, and who stayed out. Caleb, once the man the industry couldn't stop praising, began to unravel in real time. The news didn't just hit the business outlets, it went viral. Forums tore apart his interviews frame by frame, analysts exposed his inconsistencies, and a podcast episode titled "The Liar in the Spotlight" climbed to the top of the charts. But the worst wasn't public humiliation, it was the isolation that came after. The people who used to praise him now avoided his calls. The very friends he partied with now denied ever really knowing him. He tried to sue me back, said I was defaming him, said I manipulated the truth. But when the judge asked for proof of his contributions, all he could offer were vague memories and marketing slogans. He stammered through his defense, avoided eye contact, and when my team pulled up the signed agreements with his own signature, removing himself from technical roles years ago, the courtroom went silent. After the ruling, Caleb's financial accounts were frozen pending investigations, and news broke that he'd taken out multiple loans in the company's name without proper authorization. What little credibility he had left evaporated overnight. His house, the mansion he bought with investor money, was seized. Cars repossessed. Bank accounts drained. And the final blow. His longtime girlfriend left him, releasing her own statement, saying she never knew the real man behind the suits and cameras. His spiral wasn't just professional, it was personal. His phone stopped ringing. He was asked to resign from speaking engagements, blacklisted from tech events, and online threads turned him into a meme, a punchline about arrogance, ego, and stolen dreams. I heard through someone we both knew that he started drinking again. That he showed up at an old friend's office begging for work, not a partnership, just a job. But no one wanted to be associated with a man who took credit for someone else's blood and sweat. He couldn't even get hired by the very developers he once mocked. And yet, despite it all, I never once celebrated his fall. Not publicly. Not privately. Because deep down, the tragedy wasn't just what he did to me, it was what he did to himself. He could have been part of something great, something lasting. But instead, he traded loyalty for ego, and family for fame. As for me, I didn't return to the spotlight, I let my work speak for itself. The company flourished. The team grew. We opened offices in 3 countries. I was invited to speak on panels, write for Forbes, even received awards, but I never mentioned Caleb. Not once. Because the best response to betrayal isn't vengeance, it's undeniable success. And in the quiet moments, when people ask if I ever hear from him, I say no. But I imagine he sees me, on the covers, on the lists, on the stages where he always wanted to stand, and I wonder if he regrets the one decision that cost him everything. Because when you build a castle on lies, don't be surprised when the truth turns it to dust. My parents watched it all unfold from the sidelines, and for a long time, they didn't say much. Maybe they didn't know how, maybe they were ashamed, or maybe they finally realized what it felt like to stand on the wrong side of a story. My mother stopped calling as often, her messages turned into quiet check-ins instead of excuses, and my father, the same man who once told me to be happy for my brother's success, couldn't even look me in the eye when we crossed paths again at a family event. He just stood there, holding his hands behind his back, as if he carried the weight of every word he wished he hadn't said. Then one evening, months after the dust had settled and the headlines faded, my mother showed up at my office. No warning, no grand entrance, just her and a small tin of the cookies she used to bake when I was little. She placed them on my desk and said, "You always liked these, even when I forgot to make them." I didn't say anything, I just looked at her, waiting for the words I wasn't sure would ever come. And then she said it. "We believed in the wrong son. Not because we didn't love you, but because you never asked to be seen. You just kept giving and we just kept taking. And I am so sorry." She broke down, the kind of crying that shakes your whole body, and I realized in that moment, she wasn't just mourning what Caleb had done, she was mourning all the moments she overlooked me while I was silently holding everything together. My father apologized in his own quiet way. He started showing up. At events, at panels, sometimes just outside my building with 2 cups of coffee and no explanation. He never said the words, "I'm sorry," but he said things like, "You've made us proud," and "I read your article." And once, when we stood together at a gala, he leaned in and said, "I finally understand why silence doesn't mean weakness. You were never invisible. We just didn't know how to look." And that meant something. Not because I needed it to move on, but because I had already moved on. I had rebuilt everything I lost and more. But hearing those words, it closed a chapter one didn't realize was still open. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had become my own validation. But having them finally see me, Not as Caleb's brother or the quiet son, but as the man who rose from betrayal and built something powerful. That was its own kind of peace. And maybe that's what real healing looks like. Not erasing the scars, but letting them remind you that even when the people closest to you couldn't see your worth, you never stopped building it anyway. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories.